A crowded flight lands. A high-end silver carry-on is pulled from the overhead bin. A loud voice cuts through the cabin. That man stole my luggage. A tired doctor, a furious passenger, and a gate agent eager to make an arrest. The only thing standing between Dr. Elias Thorne and a pair of handcuffs is a small monogrammed leather tag. But what's written on that tag won't just end the argument. It will detonate a career. This is the story of how one quiet, deliberate action in the face of prejudice triggered an avalanche of hard karma, proving that your words can and will find you. The cabin of American Airlines flight AA-112 was a pressurized tube of stale air, blue-tinged light and quiet anticipation. The plane, an Airbus A321T, that had spent the last 5 hours ferrying souls from Los Angeles to New York, was beginning its final juddering descent into JFK International. In seat 2A, Dr. Elias Thorne closed the medical journal he'd been annotating. The article, Novel Approaches to Mitral Valve Prolapse, had been dense, but his keynote speech on the same topic at the Los Angeles conference had been a resounding success. He was a man defined by precision. His suit, a bespoke charcoal grey, showed no signs of the cross-country flight. His salt and pepper beard was neatly trimmed, and his eyes, though tired, were sharp and analytical. Elias was the chief of cardiac surgery at New York Presbyterian, a position he had earned through 2 decades of relentless work, steady hands, and an unshakable calm that unnerved his residents and saved his patients. He was by nature a quiet man, a man who observed. He glanced out the window. The grey, watery expanse of the Atlantic gave way to the puzzle-piece suburbs of Long Island. Landing. Good. He had a 2 p.m. philanthropy board review at the hospital, a meeting he found tedious but necessary. A few rows behind him in the last row of business class, Caroline Lawson was practically vibrating with a different kind of energy. She was 45, impeccably dressed in a cream-colored pantsuit, and utterly consumed by anxiety. She wasn't just flying to New York, she was flying to her new life. At 2 p.m., she had the final interview for the Vice President of Communications at the Kensworth Foundation. This wasn't just a job, it was the job. A 7-figure salary, a corner office overlooking Central Park, and most importantly, a seat at the table with some of the most powerful people in the city. The Kensworth Foundation was a titan of philanthropy, with a focus on medical innovation. Caroline had clawed her way up from a mid-level marketing firm. She was smart, she was ruthless, and she was a master of personal branding. She was also in this moment a nervous wreck. She'd spent the flight rehearsing answers, her leg bouncing, earning an annoyed sigh from the passenger next to her. She'd complained to the flight attendant, a patient woman named Sarah, 3 times once, about the lukewarm coffee, once about the spotty Wi-Fi, and once about the man in row 9 who kept clearing his throat. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been cleared for our final approach into John F. Kennedy International Airport. The pilot's voice crackled. Elias unclipped his pen and placed it in his breast pocket. Caroline reapplied her lipstick, her hand shaking slightly. At JFK Terminal 8, Gate 12. Mason Jenkins adjusted his tie. He was new. He'd only been an American Airlines gate agent for 3 months, and he'd already had 2 customer complaints for being overly aggressive. His supervisor had pulled him aside just yesterday. "Mason," she'd said, "you're not security. You're customer service. De-escalate. That's the job." Mason hated that. He believed in rules. He believed in order. He saw the chaos of the terminal, the crying babies, the irate passengers, the endless lines, and he felt a desperate need to control it. He saw the arrival of AA-112 on his screen. On time. He straightened his vest, ready to enforce the boarding and deplaning process with military precision. The plane gave a final heavy shudder as the wheels screeched against the tarmac. The engines roared in reverse, thrust, pressing everyone into their seats one last time. Elias Thorne gathered his journal and his phone. Caroline Lawson grabbed her briefcase, her heart pounding. The fasten seatbelt sign pinged off. Instantly the cabin was chaos. The click-clack of overhead bins, opening, the rustle of jackets, the murmur of impatient voices. Elias, being in 2A, was one of the first to stand. He waited patiently for the passenger in row 1 to exit. He then reached up into the overhead bin and retrieved his carry-on. It was a silver Rimowa classic, a beautiful piece of aluminum luggage known for its distinctive grooves and high price tag. It was a gift from the board after a particularly difficult surgical success. Attached to the handle was a thick black leather tag, his initials E.T., monogrammed in simple silver leaf. He placed it on the floor, ready to extend the handle. "That's my bag." The voice was sharp, nasal, and laced with accusation. Elias turned. Caroline Lawson was standing in the aisle, one row behind him, her face pale and her eyes wide with a mixture of panic and fury. "Excuse me," Elias said, his voice quiet. "My bag," she repeated louder, pointing a manicured finger at the Rimowa. "You just took my bag." The aisle of a deplaning aircraft is a tight, unforgiving space. It's a corridor of forced intimacy, and Caroline Lawson had just violated its one unspoken rule: mind your own business and keep moving. Elias looked from her accusatory finger to the bag at his feet. "I believe you're mistaken, ma'am," he said, his voice even. "This is my luggage." "Don't mistaken me," Caroline snapped. Her voice, already high, climbed half an octave. The passengers behind her groaned, the human logjam already beginning. "I know what my bag looks like. I've been watching it. You took it from the bin." Elias was a man who had faced down aortic dissections at 3 a.m. He did not rattle easily, but he felt a familiar cold weariness seep into his bones. He knew this script. "Ma'am, this bag has been in my possession since I left Los Angeles. I packed it myself this morning." "Liar!" she shrieked. The word echoed in the small space. A few passengers pulled out their phones, sensing the kind of drama that breaks up the monotony of travel. A college student in row 5, filming the deplaning process for a travel vlog, steadied his phone and zoomed in. "You probably saw it in the bin and thought it was yours, or maybe you just—" She stopped, but her eyes finished the sentence. Her gaze flickered over his dark skin, his expensive but understated suit, and her mind, primed by prejudice and anxiety, filled in the blank. How could this man afford a bag like that? She didn't say it, but everyone heard it. "You're holding up the line," Elias said, his voice hardening just a fraction. "If you would please step aside, I'm sure your bag is still in the overhead." "I'm not moving until you give me my property," she cried. "It has my interview documents in it. My whole life is in that bag, flight attendant. This man stole my bag." Sarah, the flight attendant, who had endured Caroline's complaints for 5 hours, hurried up the aisle. "Ma'am, what's going on? Please, we need to clear the aisle." "He stole my bag." Caroline pointed again, her entire arm shaking. "He's a thief." "Ma'am," Sarah said, her customer service voice strained. "I'm sure it's a simple mistake. Many bags look alike." "It's not a mistake. It's theft." He was probably snooping in the first-class bins. The implication was clear. He didn't belong. He must have snuck up from coach to steal from the paying customers. Elias looked at her. He saw her high-strung panic, but he also saw the casual, venomous racism that underpinned it. He had seen it in hospital boardrooms, in country clubs, and now in the first-class aisle. "This is my bag." He repeated the words now like chips of ice. "I am in seat 2A. My bag was placed in the bin directly above my head. "You," he said, looking at her boarding pass, still clutched in her hand, "are in 10C. Your bin is 3 sections back." "You don't know that?" "I do," Elias said, "because I watched you put your bag up. It's a silver Toomey, not a remover. It's also slightly dented on the left corner." This precision, this observation, seemed to enrage her more than his denial. It was as if he had no right to observe her. "He's lying. He's a thief and he's lying. I want the police." By now the jet bridge door was open and the first few passengers were squeezing past the drama. The logjam had reached a critical point, and at the end of the jet bridge, hearing the commotion, was Mason Jenkins. "Sir Ma'am, what's the problem?" Mason called out, his voice booming with unearned authority. "This man." Caroline surged forward, shoving past Elias and stumbling onto the jet bridge. She pointed back at him. "Mason. His name tag says, 'Mason, help me.' This man stole my luggage right out of the bin. He's trying to run off with it." Mason Jenkins's eyes lit up. This was it. Not a de-escalation situation, but a take-charge situation. He saw a well-dressed, hysterical white woman and a black man holding a very expensive bag. His bias, trained by a lifetime of stereotypes and a craving for authority, snapped into place. He put a hand out, palm flat, to stop Elias from exiting the plane. "Sir," Mason said, his voice dropping into what he thought was an intimidating baritone, "I'm going to have to ask you to hand over the luggage." The jet bridge became a theatre. The passengers shuffling by were a captive audience. The air was thick with the smell of jet fuel and the palpable ugly tension of a public confrontation. Dr. Elias Thorne stepped off the plane and onto the carpeted ramp, his silver Rimowa rolling silently beside him. He did not stop, but he did not rush. He moved with the deliberate grace of a man who refused to be hurried. Mason Jenkins, the gate agent, puffed his chest and stepped directly into Elias's path. "Sir," I said, "stop. You are being detained. You have been accused of stealing luggage." The word "detained" hung in the air. The vlogger in row 5 was still filming his lens, capturing the scene perfectly. Mason's self-important stance, Caroline's teary-eyed, furious face, and Elias's mask of profound, weary calm. "You are not a police officer," Elias stated quietly. "You cannot detain me. You are a gate agent." "I am an agent of this airline, and you are on airport property," Mason retorted, his face flushing. He was losing control. "This passenger," he gestured to Caroline, "has identified you as a thief. Now hand over the bag, or I will call port authority." "Call them," Elias said. "I welcome it. In fact, I insist." This threw both Mason and Caroline. They had expected denial fear, perhaps an attempt to flee. They did not expect agreement. Caroline, seeing her narrative slipping, redoubled her efforts. "He's trying to call my bluff. He's probably already opened it and taken my things. My interview notes. My laptop. God, my entire career is in that bag. You have to stop him." She was performing, now playing to the crowd. "I'm supposed to be at a job interview. A major interview. He's sabotaging me. It's a hate crime." This new wild accusation, this twisting of the situation, was a masterstroke of malice. She was now the victim, not just of theft, but of a targeted attack. Mason Jenkins, emboldened by her hysteria, nodded grimly. "Sir, this is your last chance. Give me the bag." "No," Elias said simply. "That's it." Mason reached for the radio on his shoulder. "This is Gate 12. I need port authority at the T8 B12 jet bridge immediately. We have a passenger theft suspect, is non-compliant." "Non-compliant," Elias repeated the word, tasting like ash. "Because I won't surrender my own property based on her unhinged fantasy. "It's not a fantasy," Caroline screamed. "That's my bag. Look, it's a silver Rimowa. It has the grooves. How many of those can there be?" "A great many," Elias said, his eyes scanning the crowd. "It's a popular brand. However, this one is mine, and I can prove it. Which is more," he added, his gaze landing on her, "than you seem to be able to do." "Just give it to him," a man from the back yelled. "Let's go. Yeah, man, just open it up," another added. Elias felt the press of the crowd, the weight of their judgment. They didn't see a doctor. They didn't see a man of stature. They saw what Caroline and Mason had painted, a black man causing trouble. "You want me to open my bag?" Elias asked the crowd. "Here in the jet bridge, you want me to display my personal belongings because this woman screamed. Is that the new policy, Mason?" Mason faltered. "The police will handle it." "They will," Elias agreed. "And when they do, I will be filing a formal complaint against you, Mason Jenkins, for unlawful detention and slander. And I will be filing a complaint against American Airlines for the gross incompetence and racial profiling of its staff." The legal specificity of the threat delivered with the cold precision of a scalpel finally gave Mason pause. He looked from Elias's unflinching eyes to Caroline's blotchy, furious face. For the first time, a sliver of doubt entered his mind. "Sir, maybe if you just have a receipt, a tag." Mason tried his voice now, slightly less boisterous. "A tag," Elias said. "Yes, I do have a tag." He paused. The crowd was silent. The vlogger's phone was held high. Even Caroline, in her tirade, stopped to see what he would do. Elias let out a slow, controlled sigh. It was the same sigh he gave right before a long, complex surgery. It was a centering breath. He looked at Caroline. He looked at Mason. "You have both made a very serious, very public and very loud allegation." Elias said, his voice just high enough to carry. "You have accused me of being a thief. You have called the police. You have stopped over 100 people from getting on with their day. All for this bag." He reached down. He didn't just point. He slowly, deliberately unhooked the thick, black leather luggage tag from the handle. Time seemed to slow down. The only sound was the distant whine of a jet engine and the shuffling feet of the passengers further back, oblivious to the drama unfolding at the gate. Elias Thorne held the leather tag in his hand. His initials E.T. were stamped on the front in subdued silver. Caroline squinted. "C.E.T. What does that prove? My name is Caroline Lawson. It's not my bag." She looked triumphant, as if this were the gotcha moment. Elias looked at her with something approaching pity. "Your name is Caroline Lawson. Mine is not E.T. Those are my initials. You, Mason, were the one who wanted to see a tag." He held the tag out, not to Caroline, but to Mason. He didn't just show him the front. He flipped open the leather cover, revealing the white card tucked neatly inside. "Read this," Elias commanded. His voice was no longer quiet. It was the voice he used in the operating room, the voice that demanded and received absolute obedience. "Aloud, please." Mason Jenkins took the tag. His hands, Elias noted, were trembling slightly. The vlogger's camera zoomed in, catching the text on the card as Mason's shadow fell across it. Mason's mouth went dry. He licked his lips. "Read it," Elias said again. Mason stammered. Dr. E. Thorne." "The full name," Elias instructed. "And the title." Mason swallowed his face, turning a blotchy red. "Dr. Elias Thorne, Chief of Cardiac Surgery, New York Presbyterian Hospital." A collective gasp went through the crowd. The man who had been called a thief and non-compliant was one of the top surgeons in the country. Caroline's face went from furious red to a chalky, sickly white. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Oh, but that's not all." Elias said, his voice relentlessly calm. He reached into his suit pocket, the one he'd tucked his pen into. He pulled out his hospital ID on its lanyard and clipped to the same lanyard his conference badge from the event in Los Angeles. He held it up for all to see. The vlogger's camera filmed it in perfect high-definition clarity. The badge read, Dr. Elias Thorne, Keynote Speaker, American College of Cardiology, Annual Conference. I was the keynote speaker. Elias said, his eyes locked on Caroline. This bag contains my notes, my laptop with patient confidential research, and the plaque I was just awarded. Now, Ms. Lawson, would you like me to find your bag for you? The Toomey with the dented corner. Or, he said, turning his cold gaze to the gate agent, should we wait for the Port Authority police? You were so keen on calling. Mason Jenkins looked as if he'd been struck by lightning. He was holding the ID of one of the most powerful doctors in New York. He dropped the luggage tag as if it had burned him. Sir, Dr. Thorne, I apologize. Mason stammered, his voice a pathetic squeak. She was very convincing, she said. She was loud, Elias corrected. And I was, what I fit the profile you were comfortable with, Mason. You escalated a simple misunderstanding into a criminal accusation. You threatened me. You humiliated me in front of hundreds of people. No, I was just following procedure. Was it procedure to call me a suspect? Elias shot back. Was it procedure to call the police before you verified a single fact? Suddenly a voice came from the plane. Ma'am, is this yours? The flight attendant, Sarah, was standing at the door of the aircraft, holding a silver Toomey carry-on, a carry-on with a very distinct, visible dent on the upper left corner. All eyes went to the bag. Caroline Lawson looked at the Toomey. She looked at the Rimowa at Elias's feet. She looked at the ID in his hand. And she looked at the sea of faces and the dozens of phones all pointed directly at her. She had just publicly, and with racist vitriol, accused one of the city's most prominent surgeons of being a common thief. The silence on the jet bridge was a physical weight. It was broken only by the click of the vlogger's phone as he saved the recording. Caroline Lawson was frozen. The blood had drained from her face, leaving her lipstick a garish red slash. She looked from her dented Toomey, now held by the flight attendant, to the identical pristine Rimowa at Dr. Thorne's feet. She had not made a mistake. She had made a choice. She had seen a black man with an expensive bag, and her prejudiced mind had constructed an entire narrative of theft, a narrative she had broadcast with righteous racist fury. Mason Jenkins was in a full-blown panic. Dr. Thorne, sir, please, it was a misunderstanding. She was hysterical. I'll call Port Authority back. I'll tell them it's a false alarm. You will do that, Elias said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. He carefully clipped his conference badge back to his pocket and reattached his leather luggage tag to the Rimowa's handle. The click of the metal buckle was like the sound of a closing door. But this is not over, Elias continued, turning his full attention to the gate agent. You did not follow procedure. You engaged in profiling. You abused your authority. And you did it publicly. I want your full name and your employee ID number. Now. Sir, please, Mason begged. Your name and your ID number. Defeated, Mason recited his ID number and his full name, Mason Jenkins. Thank you, Mason Jenkins, Elias said. You can expect to hear from my hospital's legal counsel and from American Airlines corporate. I will be filing a formal complaint demanding your immediate termination. Mason's knees visibly buckled. Termination, sir, it was a mistake. I need this job. And I. Elias said, need to get to a hospital board meeting. You should have considered that before you appointed yourself judge, jury, and arresting officer based on the ramblings of a bigot. He then turned his gaze to Caroline. She was still standing there, mute as passengers pushed past her, shaking their heads in disgust. "Idiot," one muttered. "That was Dr. Thorne," another whispered, having recognized the name. Elias stepped toward her. Caroline flinched as if expecting to be hit. But Elias Thorne did not raise his voice. He did not yell. He simply stopped in front of her. "You," he said, his voice low and precise, "owe me an apology." Caroline's throat worked. She was a communications expert. Her entire life was built on words. But now she had none. It looked just like—" "No, it didn't," Elias said. "You saw a black man in first class with a bag you coveted, and you jumped to a conclusion. You screamed thief. You screamed hate crime. You lied about your interview documents to build a case. You were willing to ruin my day, perhaps my reputation, to satisfy your own entitlement. You didn't make a mistake, Ms. Lawson. You made a malicious, racist accusation." He leaned in just slightly. "And you did it on camera." Her eyes shot to the college student who was still filming his face, a mask of shocked fascination. The video was already uploading. "Enjoy your interview," Elias said. With that, he extended the handle of his remover. The click of the handle locking into place was sharp and final. He straightened his suit jacket, nodded once to the mortified flight attendant, Sarah, and walked away. He did not look back. He disappeared into the chaos of Terminal 8, a column of quiet dignity, leaving a smoking crater of humiliation behind him. Caroline Lawson was left alone, standing next to Mason Jenkins. The crowd had dispersed. The show was over. She grabbed her dented Toomey from Sarah without a word. Her phone buzzed in her hand. It was a calendar notification. Final interview, Kensworth Foundation, 2:00 p.m., 40th floor boardroom. She had less than 2 hours. She was covered in a cold sweat. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone. "It's fine," she whispered to herself, starting to walk, then run toward the baggage claim. "It's fine. He's just a doctor, a surgeon. What are the chances? It's a big city. He's busy. He's not. It'll be fine. No one will ever know." But the vlogger's video titled "Karen Accuses Top NYC Surgeon of Stealing Ends Badly" had just finished uploading. It hit 10,000 views before she even got to the taxi stand. The back of the black GMC Suburban was an oasis of quiet. Elias's driver, a man named Tony, who had been with him for 5 years, sensed his boss's mood and kept the partition up. Elias sat back against the cool leather, but he was not relaxing. He was methodical. He did not post on social media. He did not vent. He acted. His first call was to Gloria, his executive assistant. "Gloria, I'm about 10 minutes out. Please clear my schedule for the first hour. And get Michael Harrison on the phone." Michael Harrison was the general counsel for New York Presbyterian. 5 minutes later, his phone rang. "Elias, back in town, how was the conference?" "It was fine, Michael. Listen, I was involved in an incident at JFK, Terminal 8, American Airlines." In calm, precise, clinical detail, Elias recounted the entire event. He gave the flight number, the gate number, and the names. Mason Jenkins, employee, ID 7749B, and the passenger, Caroline Lawson. The flight attendant, Sarah, was a witness. She was professional. Jenkins was not. Michael Harrison was silent for a moment. "Elias, are you okay?" "I'm angry," Elias admitted, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "I'm exhausted. But I am not harmed. I am, however, concerned. This wasn't just poor customer service, Michael. This was profiling." Jenkins called for Port Authority on the word of a single hysterical passenger. He used the word detained. He called me a suspect in front of 100 people. I want him fired, and I want a formal public apology from the CEO of American Airlines. You'll have it, Michael said, his voice hardening. The hospital's legal team was famously aggressive. We spend millions a year on air travel for our surgeons and transport teams. AA will not want to lose that contract. I'll have a letter drafted to their general counsel before lunch. I'll also check the Port Authority dispatch. If Jenkins's call went on record, this is very, very serious for them. Good, Elias said. Now on to the second matter, the 2 p.m. philanthropy review. Ah, yes, the Kensworth Foundation, Michael said. They're presenting their new Community Medical Access Grant proposal. Their new CEO, Mr. Davies, is there. He's very keen. They want to attach their name to our new cardiac wing. I've read the proposal, Elias said. It's solid. Who are they sending Davies? Davies their COO and... let's see. Michael clicked a few keys. They're bringing in their top candidate for the new VP of Communications. They want our informal buy-in before they make the final offer. They value your opinion on public-facing roles. Name is Caroline Lawson. Elias Thorne went very, very still. The Suburban, which had been gliding through midtown traffic, came to a stop at a red light. Elias, Michael asked, you still there? Michael. Elias said, his voice a low, dangerous murmur. The passenger. The woman who accused me of theft at the airport. What about her? Her name, Elias said, is Caroline Lawson. Another longer silence. Oh my God, Michael whispered. What are the odds? I'm not sure they're odds at all, Elias said, his mind working the pieces, clicking into place. She mentioned a major interview. She was flying from LA. Kensworth's old headquarters were in LA. She's their candidate. She must have been flying in for this exact meeting. The car began to move again. Elias looked out the window at the towering, familiar facade of his hospital. Michael, Elias said, do me a favor. Find out if anyone on the Kensworth board has seen the news today. There's a video. A video? A video? It's likely unflattering. Send Mr. Davies my apologies. Tell him I'll be running late for the 2 p.m. Maybe 2:15. Elias? What are you planning? I'm not planning anything, Elias said, a cold, hard knot of justice forming in his stomach. I'm just going to attend a meeting. But I think, given the circumstances, I'll let Ms. Lawson get comfortable first. He hung up. The surgeon's calm had returned, but it was now overlaid with the icy precision of a man about to make a final, fatal cut. Caroline Lawson stumbled out of a yellow cab in front of the Kensworth Foundation's glass and steel skyscraper. She had 45 minutes to spare. She'd spent $20 at a Starbucks in the lobby, desperately trying to scrub the blotchy tear tracks from her face and chugging an espresso that did nothing to calm her shaking hands. Her mind was a looping, high-speed replay of the incident. The name tag, Dr. Elias Thorne, Chief of Cardiac Surgery, the sea of phones. His final damning words, enjoy your interview. It was a nightmare, a catastrophe. She checked her phone. The vlogger's video. It was everywhere. Her friends were texting her. Is this you? Her old boss had texted WTFF factor. The title was Airline Karen Gets Destroyed by Top Surgeon. It had 1.8 million views. It had been screenshotted and was all over X, formerly Twitter. The comments were brutal. She should be fired. This is racism pure and simple. I hope he sues her into oblivion. Fired, she thought hysterically. I have to get hired first. She was a communications expert. She was supposed to manage public perception, and she had just become the star of the most viral Karen video of the month. Okay, she breathed, smoothing her cream-colored pantsuit in the lobby's reflection. Okay, fix this. Control the narrative. What were the chances Thorne was a doctor, a busy, important surgeon? He wasn't on the board of a philanthropy foundation. He was probably in an operating room right now, saving a life, not thinking about her. The name Kensworth Foundation would mean nothing to him. This Mr. Davies, the CEO, he was an older gentleman. He probably didn't look at X or TikTok. The board would be full of old money types. They wouldn't have seen it. She just had to be brilliant. She had to be so charming, so competent, so perfect in this interview that even if the video surfaced later, they would protect her. They would see her as their VP of communications, not as the Airline Karen. This was her one shot. She would not let that man take this from her. She had worked too hard. She rode the silent high-speed elevator to the 40th floor. The doors opened onto a reception area of hushed, expensive minimalism, white marble orchids, and a stunning view of Central Park. "Caroline Lawson," she announced to the receptionist, her voice only trembling slightly. "Here for the 2 p.m. meeting with Mr. Davies." "Of course, Ms. Lawson. They're expecting you. They're just finishing up a call. Can I get you some water?" "Yes, please." She sat on a low leather couch, her briefcase on her lap. She practiced her smile, confident, approachable, in control. At 2:05 p.m., a kind-faced older man, Mr. Davies, emerged. "Caroline, so wonderful to finally meet you in person. Your portfolio is just stellar, truly. Mr. Davies, the pleasure is all mine," she said, her voice smooth as silk. The practiced, confident mask snapped into place. "Come right this way," he said, leading her into a magnificent boardroom. "The rest of the committee is here." She walked in. There were 3 other people. The COO, a sharp woman named Alana, and 2 senior board members. They all smiled. They shook her hand. They haven't seen it. She thought a wave of profound relief washing over her. "It's fine. It's going to be fine." "Please sit," Mr. Davies said, gesturing to the chair at the end of the long mahogany table. "We are just waiting on one more person. He's a vital member of our advisory board. He oversees our single largest philanthropic partnership, the New York Presbyterian Medical Fund. We value his opinion immensely on all our public-facing hires." Here he is now." Caroline smiled, turning her head toward the door, ready to charm this final important stakeholder. The door opened. Dr. Elias Thorne walked in, holding a leather-bound hospital portfolio. Time did not just stop. It shattered. For Caroline Lawson, the world dissolved into a high-pitched, ringing sound. The air in the 40th floor boardroom, just moments before a comfortable 70 degrees, became thin and cold. The faces of the board members, Mr. Davies, Alana, blurred into watercolor smudges. The only thing in focus was the man standing in the doorway. Dr. Elias Thorne. He was no longer in the slightly rumpled suit from the flight. He was wearing a fresh, impeccably tailored navy suit, a crisp white shirt, and a sober, dark blue tie. He looked powerful. He looked serious. He looked inevitable. He stopped his hand still on the door handle, and his eyes met hers. There was no shock in his expression. No surprise. There was only a cold, analytical recognition. It was the same look he'd given her on the jet bridge, but this time it was not weary. It was final. Caroline's practiced, confident smile didn't just fade. It cracked and fell from her face. Her skin went from pale to a ghostly, translucent white. She looked, as Mr. Davies would later describe it, like she had seen a spectre. Mr. Davies, oblivious, beamed. Elias, perfect timing. Come in, come in." Elias nodded, his gaze breaking from Caroline's, and he walked toward the table. "Dr. Thorne." Mr. Davies continued, "I'd like you to meet Caroline Lawson. She's our top candidate for the VP of Communications, the one with that incredible West Coast outreach portfolio we discussed." Elias did not shake her hand. He didn't even look at her as he passed. He walked to the head of the table directly opposite Carolyn and placed his leather portfolio down. The thud was quiet, but it echoed in the room. He slowly pulled out his chair and sat. Mr. Davies, sensing the sudden icy drop in the room's temperature, faltered. "Elias, is something wrong? Do you two know each other?" Caroline's mouth was working. Dr. Thorne, I... She was trying to form words. Any words. It was a mistake, a misunderstanding. I didn't know, but the words wouldn't come. She was paralyzed by the sheer cosmic impossibility of it. Elias Thorne ignored her. He looked at Mr. Davies, his expression one of mild professional concern. He opened his folder. "Mr. Davies," Elias began, his voice perfectly level, the rich, calm baritone that had commanded operating rooms for 20 years. "The Kensworth Foundation's mission, as stated in your own charter, is built on public trust integrity and community outreach." "Correct," Mr. Davies said, looking confused. "That's exactly why we're so excited by Ms. Lawson's portfolio. Her ideas for community engagement are, well, they're revolutionary." "Are they?" Elias said, tapping a pen on his folder. "I find that surprising." He finally lifted his eyes to Caroline. She was shaking her hands, clutching the arms of her chair. "Because community. Mr. Davies is a very broad term. It includes everyone, not just the people we're comfortable with, and integrity. Well, integrity means taking responsibility for one's actions. It means not building a narrative based on prejudice." The board was now looking back and forth between the frozen, panicked candidate and their most important medical advisor. Elias Alana, the COO, cut in her voice sharp. "What is going on? You're making our candidate, and frankly, us, very uncomfortable." "Am I?" Elias said. "That's unfortunate. I was made exceptionally uncomfortable this morning, as were about 100 other people. At JFK Terminal 8. Mr. Davies's face went blank. "The airport." Caroline finally found her voice. It was a strangled, desperate whisper. "Dr. Thorne, please, it was a misunderstanding. A terrible, terrible mistake. I was stressed. I didn't—" Elias cut her off, his voice slicing through her excuses. "Was it a misunderstanding when you shrieked, and I quote, 'That man stole my luggage'?" The blood drained from Mr. Davies's face. "Was it a misunderstanding when you implied I didn't belong in first class and must have snuck up to steal from your bin?" Alana's jaw dropped. "Or," Elias continued, his voice relentless, "was it a misunderstanding when you lied about your interview documents to build your case and demanded a gate agent call the Port Authority police on me, simply for holding my own property?" He let the accusations hang in the air. The silence in the boardroom was absolute. "Elias," Mr. Davies whispered, horrified. This woman did that to you?" "To me," Elias confirmed. "Less than 3 hours ago. She called me a thief, a liar, and a criminal, all because, and I can deduce no other reason, she could not fathom a black man legally owning a Rimowa suitcase." He paused, then looked directly at Caroline. Her eyes were swimming with tears, but they were not tears of remorse. They were tears of utter, abject, career-ending terror. "You wanted this interview, Miss Lawson," Elias said. "You said your whole life was in that bag. You were wrong. Your whole life was in this room, and you just quite spectacularly set it on fire." The Kensworth Foundation boardroom, a space designed for meticulous 9-figure decisions, had transformed into a silent, brutal courtroom. The air was so thin it was unbreathable. Caroline Lawson, who had walked in as the poised, high-powered future of the Foundation, was now the defendant in a trial that had concluded before she even knew it had begun. She was no longer just panicked. Her mind, the sharp, strategic communications mind that had clawed her way to this very room, was frantically, desperately trying to spin. This was a PR crisis, and she was the client. She had to reframe the narrative. She looked at the faces. Mr. Davies, the kind, paternal CEO, now looked at her as if she were a viper he had just found in his briefcase. Alana, the COO, was not angry. She was calculating her eyes, running a cost-benefit analysis of the sheer catastrophic liability Carolyn represented. The other two board members, an older gentleman named Arthur, and a stern woman, Beatrice, who managed the community outreach grants, looked at her with a uniform cold disgust. And then there was Elias. He was not disgusted. He was not angry. He was simply done. He had presented his evidence and was now waiting with the patience of a man who knows the outcome for the sentence to be passed. Mr. Davies, Caroline began, her voice, a reedy, pathetic thing, a ghost of the confident tone she had practiced. Mr. Davies, Alana, Dr. Thorne, there has been a profound, a terrible misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Elias's voice cut in, not loud, but sharp as a diamond. He did not let her continue. He did not let her build her web of excuses. He had already seen her perform her lies on the jet bridge. He placed his phone on the table. You're a communications expert, Miss Lawson. Let's review the public record of this misunderstanding. Shall we? He tapped the screen. The vlogger's video now at 2.5 million views queued up. He didn't need to text it to Mr. Davies. He simply turned the phone to face the head of the table. This misunderstanding is currently the #1 trending video on X in the New York area, Elias said calmly. It seems your West Coast outreach portfolio has already gone national. He pressed play. The tinny audio from the phone's speaker filled the opulent, silent room. That's my bag. You took it from the bin. Liar, you're a thief. He was probably snooping in the first-class bins. He's a thief and he's lying. I want the police. The board watched, mortified. They saw Caroline's face, not stressed, but contorted with a vicious, righteous fury. They saw her finger jabbing aggressively at the calm, steady figure of Dr. Thorne. They heard the undisguised racist insinuation that he, a black man, could not possibly belong. They saw the gate agent Mason Jenkins puffing up, calling Elias non-compliant and suspect. They watched the entire excruciating 3 minutes right up to the reveal of the name tag. They saw Caroline's face collapses in on itself when Elias held up his hospital ID. Elias stopped the video. He didn't slide the phone away. He left it on the table, a black mirror reflecting the room's horrified silence. Mr. Davies, a man whose grandfather had built this foundation on Quaker principles of integrity and service, was ashen. His hands were clasped so tightly on the table, his knuckles were white. He looked at Elias, then at Caroline. His voice, when it came, was a low, shaking rumble of pure fury. You, he said, did that. This morning. To him, he gestured to Elias, the living, breathing symbol of their single largest philanthropic partnership. You, a candidate for Vice President of Communications for the Kensworth Foundation, stood in a public airport and accused the chief of cardiac surgery at New York Presbyterian of being a thief. The full insane scale of her error, of her prejudice, landed on Carolyn like a physical weight. The spin was gone. The strategy was gone. All that was left was raw animal terror. "Mr. Davies, please!" She finally choked out the words, tumbling over each other in a sob. Please, it was one moment. A terrible, terrible mistake. I'm not a racist. I swear I was just so stressed. So anxious about this interview, about impressing you. I hadn't slept, I was on edge. It looked just like my bag. I wasn't thinking it was a moment of madness. A moment of madness. It was Elias who spoke, his voice dangerously quiet. You were stressed about this interview, so you decided to try and have a black man arrested. You were anxious, so you felt entitled to publicly humiliate me, to accuse me of a crime. That is... Alana. The COO said, her voice dripping with ice. Quite possibly the most self-serving, pathetic excuse I have ever heard. You're a communications candidate, Ms. Lawson. Your entire job profile is grace under pressure. Your job is to de-escalate, to manage perception. And your first instinct under mild stress is to create a racist public spectacle. Beatrice, the community grants manager, spoke for the first time. Her voice was thin with rage. And what precisely would you have us communicate to the communities we serve, Ms. Lawson, the ones we fund, the free clinics in the Bronx, the inner-city health initiatives, that our new vice president holds these? Views that she believes people of color are snooping in first class if they have something nice. How does that align with our charter? Caroline had no answer. She just wept her mascara, finally running, carving black tracks down her pale, blotchy face. Mr. Davies had seen enough. He stood up. The gesture was slow, deliberate, and absolute. It was the movement of a king closing his court. Ms. Lawson, this interview is over. His voice was no longer furious. It was cold. It was the voice of a man making a final, irrevocable business decision. The Kensworth Foundation is built on a reputation that is our single most valuable asset. It takes decades to build, and, as you've just demonstrated, one viral video to threaten. You are not just a poor fit. You are a clear and present danger to that reputation. You are the antithesis of our mission. Your candidacy is withdrawn effective immediately. Mr. Davies' wife. She sobbed, standing up so fast her chair screeched backward on the polished floor. Please, this is my life. My career. Don't do this. I can fix it. I can issue a statement. I can apologize. Apologize. Mr. Davies looked at her truly, seeing the void. You think this is a communications problem? This is a character problem. You didn't just make a mistake, Ms. Lawson. You showed us exactly who you are, and we do not and will not have any association with that. He turned to Elias. Dr. Thorne, I don't even have the words to apologize for what you were put through. He then looked back at Caroline, his eyes hard. You built your career on words, Ms. Lawson. It's only fitting that you be destroyed by them. He pressed a button on his desk phone. Frank, we need an escort for Ms. Lawson from the 40th floor boardroom. She is to be seen out of the building immediately. Caroline stood there utterly broken. The facade was gone. The cream-colored pantsuit, once a symbol of her ambition, now looked like a cheap, ill-fitting costume. Defeated, and with the entire board watching her in silent, cold judgment, she fumbled for her briefcase. A large security guard, Frank, appeared at the door. He didn't touch her, but his presence was a wall. He just nodded toward the elevator. Her sobs were a wet, ugly sound in the pristine room. She gave one last, desperate look at Elias. He was already organizing his papers. She didn't exist. The boardroom door clicked shut, sealing her out. There was a long, heavy silence, broken only by Mr. Davies, letting out a ragged sigh. He slowly sat back down. Elias, he said, his voice heavy with embarrassment. My God, I recruited her myself from the LA office. Her portfolio was flawless. I had no idea. I am profoundly, deeply sorry that you of all people, our most valued partner, were subjected to that. Elias Thorne nodded, accepting the apology. He closed his leather portfolio. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. But this isn't just about me. The room quieted. I have the standing to weather this. Elias continued his gaze steady. My name is on my hospital. My ID is in my pocket. What about the man who doesn't have chief of surgery on his luggage tag? What happens to him when she screams, thief? What happens when the Mason Jenkins of the world decide he's non-compliant and call the police? That's the work your foundation is supposed to be doing. That's the community you're supposed to be protecting. The words landed harder than any accusation. This was the real verdict. Mr. Davies, shamed and humbled, nodded slowly. You're right. Of course you're right. It's a sickening reminder. He steepled his fingers. The cardiac wing, the community access grant. It's approved. Full funding. Whatever you need. Consider it. An apology and a recommitment to our partnership. We have to be better. Thank you, Robert. I'll have my team send over the final numbers, Elias said. He stood his dignity and calm fully intact. Dr. Thorne, Alana asked. What about the airline, that gate agent, Jenkins? I was just about to handle that, Elias said, walking to the door. It seems Ms. Lawson was not the only person who failed a test of character today. He walked out of the boardroom. He rode the high-speed elevator down, alone the quiet hum, a stark contrast to the morning's chaos. He stepped out into the crisp November air of Midtown and got into his waiting car. As the car pulled into traffic, his phone buzzed. It was a text from Michael Harrison, the hospital's general counsel. Elias AA's general counsel has been on the phone with me for 20 minutes. They've seen the video. They are in full-blown panic. Mason Jenkins has been suspended indefinitely pending termination. His unlawful detention call to Port Authority is on a reviewed 911 log. They are begging for a private settlement. They are offering 500,000 frequent flyer miles and a public apology written by their CEO. They want to know your terms. Elias looked out the window as his hospital, a beacon of glass and steel, came into view. He had a 2 p.m. meeting to save and a philanthropy board review to attend. He typed a simple reply, his fingers steady. My terms are that they retrain their entire North American staff on de-escalation and implicit bias. And I'm donating the miles to the Patient Transport Fund. Let's get to work. He put his phone away. He didn't seek the fight, but he had finished it. Justice had been served. Karma had been delivered. And now he had patients to see. In the end, it wasn't just about a mistaken bag. It was about prejudice power and the blinding speed of consequences. Caroline Lawson didn't just lose an interview. She lost the reputation she spent a lifetime building, all because she saw a man's skin color before she saw his name tag. Mason Jenkins didn't just lose his job. He became a case study in what happens when you abuse authority. Dr. Elias Thorne's quiet dignity proved more powerful than their loudest accusations. Karma wasn't just served. It was delivered with surgical precision in a 40th floor boardroom. What do you think? Was this justice, or was it too harsh? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Has anything like this ever happened to you? If you were moved by this story, please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to see it, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life drama and hard-hitting stories.